Hello folks, the Y Guy here again. Welcome to my home on this very beautiful winter afternoon. The name of this video is called The Y Guy is Forced to Question Some Scripture. Now before you get your panties in a knot, that word some, alright, not all. Focus on that word some, alright? There are people that don't think that the scribes lied with their pens. And this is what causes me this, and along with a lot of other things I'm going to share here, why I have to question some scripture. And it'll make sense here. But the scribes lied with their pens, spoken about in Jeremiah 8:8. All right? Or they were accused of perverting the words of God, also written about in Jeremiah 23:36. Now, this is speaking to the scribes, the ones who actually wrote scripture that later was inserted and became our Bibles. All right, so follow me. It says, "For you have perverted the words of the living God, of the Lord of hosts, our God." Perverted? Whew. That's one of my favorite New Testament verses is this. That kind of goes along with this in a way. To me it does. It may not to you, and I don't expect everyone to understand my reasoning here. But 2 Timothy 2:15 says, "Study to show yourself approved." Notice it says show yourself approved. And if you read this in the Greek, it's not saying that you have to be approved by God. But you show yourself approved unto God, meaning you submit it unto God, what you've studied, and that you're a workman that needs not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Folks, if it was all truth, it wouldn't need to be divided. All right, now that's my reasoning for this verse. All right, I hope that made sense. So I wonder why there's such a resistance to the notion of these Jeremiah verses, that what they're describing here. Okay, why there's such a resistance? Unless you believe the Bible's inerrant. Boy, that'll rock your world pretty darn good if you believe that, these Jeremiah verses. And or you put too much faith in these written words that were copies of translations upon translations of copies of translations. I had to take a breath. Okay? Or somehow you believe that God somehow protected it from flaws. I was taught that. Even though, for an example, not one Bible agrees with how many times the word hell should have been written, so no one is sure which one God protected, right? The one that had hell in it 13 times, or the one that had hell in it 54 times. Which one did God protect? Am I the only one who sees a problem? I don't believe I'm reaching here, but some of what they wrote had to be a lie and a perversion, unless you want to believe that God sanctioned the murder of men, women, and children. What I've recently heard on Facebook from a gentleman was that the Jeremiah 8 verse isn't referring to how they lied in writing Scripture, but in how they treated or handled Scripture, close quote. The Jeremiah 8:8 verse doesn't even hint at that. What was said here, it says, "How can you say, we are wise and the law of the Lord is with us? But behold, the lying pen of the scribes has made it into a lie." What is a pen used for? In handling Scripture? In treating Scripture? Or in writing Scripture? You be the judge, okay? So this line of reasoning completely ignores that the job of the scribes was to write Scripture, considering most people couldn't read or write in that time. And this even includes most of these people that are revered as authors of these books that went into our Bible. They actually had to trust these scribes. They couldn't read what they were writing. How did they know that what they were dictating was being written down word for word, or were little shortcuts taken? It just makes sense. Common sense. I was also taught that God needed to have the Israelites kill those people that are written about in Scripture in order to keep the bloodline clean of corruption for the future birth of Jesus. Have you heard that one before? And even in those verses, they mentioned livestock being killed too. Livestock? Which part of the bloodline are we supposed to worry about, folks, that might contaminate Jesus? For example, the bloodline of the Canaanites, or the bloodline of their asses, since even their livestock was killed. Some things just don't make sense. I was taught by well-meaning clergy that in some killings, God was passing some kind of judgment. That's a need for killing. Okay? A judgment from God may or may not be true, but something isn't quite adding up with me, and that something is this. Listen up. The same clergy will claim that God sanctioned his, and I got to do the little quotes, his special people to wipe out innocent men, women, and children and their puppies. Okay? Then at times the clergy will also claim that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Right? Are you following this, my reasoning here, my line of thinking? The problem I'm having is this. I see the God is love verse as a dichotomy to how God was recorded as being the one who killed people for judgmental purposes. And not only that, the icing on the cake is this, but God can't be the same yesterday, today, and forever if he did those previously violent acts of judgment, but was later claimed by Jesus. Okay? That the Father judges no one, but has given all judgment to the Son, spoken about in John 5:22. So was it or was it not all judgment that was given to the Son? Was that true or not? Didn't Jesus exist with the Father before he was born into humanity, according to Christendom? So how can God be the one passing judgments on people if Jesus is correct? How could it be God? It should have been Jesus all along passing judgment. Okay? Has given all judgment to the Son. Okay, recorded in John 5:22. Well, anyway, Jesus responds to his actual God-given judgmental authority by proclaiming God did not send the Son into the world to judge the world, but the world would be saved through him in John 3:17. That's right after the famous verse of John 3:16, for God so loved the world. Okay. Then later, Jesus confirms this by saying in John 12:47, I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. All right. Now, in closing here, I'm coming to a close here real soon. Yet, the God is the same yesterday and today. The God is the same yesterday, today, and forgiven. It's cold out here, folks. I'm trying to keep from chattering my teeth. The God that is the same yesterday, today, and forever has judged the world and or portions of it according to Scripture using floods, fire, armies, angels, and will continue to do so in the future by using more angels, pestilence, disease, boils, sores, death, destruction, and even more fire. So according to Christendom, along with Bible verses to back up their claims, it's not going to stop there, folks. It's not. God will continue these judgments upon the majority of mankind for all eternity. This is good news and hope. Christendom, you need to wake up to what message, okay, that you're preaching here. Okay, anyway, back to the beginning of why the why guy is forced to question some Scripture. Is there even the slightest, tiniest little bit of a possibility that the scribes actually lied when writing some of those stories we read in the Old Testament? Is there even that slightest possibility? Or did the scribes lie about what Jesus later said, that he nor the Father judges no one? Okay, it has to be one or the other in my little pea brain. Okay, it can't be both. Somebody's lying, either the scribes or Jesus, somebody. Well, I wrote a book about these things that just don't add up, in a book called, see if you can see that, wrong side, In Defense of God's Love. There's the title right there, written by yours truly, the Why Guy. The back cover, in case you wanted to see it. Anyway, you can pick this up on Amazon. I'll try to remember to leave a link. It's almost 500 pages for just a little over $10. It's not bad. It really isn't. And it's large print, so it would be closer to maybe 400 pages if it was normal, standard print. But think about it. And look me up on Facebook under a group called the Why Guy Group. It's a private group. However, I have an open timeline under the name of John Anthony Jones. Look me up there. And in case you're cautious about the Why Guy Group, which I don't blame you, I'm rather controversial. And give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. If you are going to leave a comment, make sure it's polite, or else your comment is going to go bye-bye. And consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thanks for viewing.